Welcome Lily, everybody.
Should this come down a little bit? Is it
Oh,
okay?
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
Sorry.
I'm not that tall. All right.
Is that good?
Yes. Okay, so my grandmary was the perfect Southern belle. She chose the name Grandmary because her name was Mary, but she always delighted in the little cousins calling her Grand Tucky because she came from Kentucky. She married her not high school sweetheart. She met him when she was 14, and she worked for maybe 1 year of her life until her days became filled with being the president of her women's club 3 times and forcing my mother and my aunt to do cotillion in the hopes that they would come out as debutantes, which is especially hilarious if you've ever met my mother. And she never washed her own hair. She would go every week to the beauty parlor to have them coif it into this preposterous mass of red curls. My childhood was very different than the childhood where my mom grew up in Kentucky. My mom is a neuroscientist, and my parents both worked a lot, and so their rule was if you weren't physically injuring yourself or physically injuring your siblings, then everything else kind of went. And my sister later became an artist, and so there's these amazing pictures of the clothes that she dressed herself in, because we dressed ourselves when we were physically capable of doing so, all these like mixed matches of, patterns and colors. And so when I was 4 years old, I had golden curly blonde hair down to my shoulders and these like gigantic bangs. And Grandmary came to visit us for Thanksgiving. And my mom was terrified because suddenly her perfect mom was stepping into her imperfect world and seeing her imperfect children and imperfect house condition and all of these things on a holiday, no less. So she was really stressed out, and she was very, in tune with the meal and everyone that was sitting at the table, and I went off to go to the bathroom. And I remember I was standing in my parents' bathroom in the right vanity looking at these bangs, just staring them down, because I hated those bangs. I hated them in my face. I hated everything about them, and now was the time when I was going to take a stand. And I was not going to talk to an adult about it, and I was not going to find a barrette. I opened the drawer and I took out the scissors and I hacked off my bangs. And I held them in my hand and I felt so victorious. Like this huge weight was lifted off my shoulders or my forehead. And so I set them on the counter and I sauntered back to the table where my mom is sitting and turns over and looks in horror as her 4-year-old daughter comes back, not just with her bangs cut off, but with giant chunks hacked out of her head down to the scalp. And my mom is a very logical, rational person. She's a scientist. So normally she would just say, what am I going to do with this? I will cut her hair short. This is fine. And it would have been fine. But Grandmary was there to see this. And so she spanked me for probably the only time in my life. And I was very aware that I ruined Thanksgiving and I was an embarrassment to my Southern belle grandmother. As we grew up, we would go to visit her in Kentucky, and it remained very clear how much I didn't fit in her world. Like, all of those things your parents teach you about manners and proper behavior, I never really learned. So I took a shower and just threw the towel on the ground, and Grandmary came down and said, you should hang up your towel, because otherwise how can your mom wash it for you? And I thought, haha, she doesn't wash my stuff, and you don't have to wash towels because you're clean when you use them. But her house was such a treat. It was this time capsule of 1970 or so. She lived in the same place since my mom was in high school to when she passed away recently. And in the hallway, there were pictures of my mom and my aunt getting married in that hallway because they both got married in that house. And in the kitchen, there was this mosaic of all of these photographs of us throughout all this time in our lives. And my sister and I, when we went there, we would go through her drawers because she had all these magnificent knickknacks and treasures from times past. And so we were sort of going through our treasure hunt when Grandmary called me up and she said, hey, I want to show you something. And she produced this envelope and she opened it up and there were 4 inches of perfect golden curly hair with a rubber band around it. And I said, what is that? And she said, it's your hair from when you cut it off at Thanksgiving. And I said, this is like 10 years later or something like that. And I said, why did you keep that? And she said, there was all this commotion and everyone was upset. And so I went to the bathroom to see what had happened. And I saw it there on the counter and it was just so perfect. I couldn't leave it there. And so she bundled it up with a rubber band and she put it in an envelope and she kept it all those years. And I looked at that hair, and I looked at those photographs of me growing up and awkwardly growing out of that little boy's haircut into a bowl haircut into some semblance of a fashionable haircut. And I realized that more than being her embarrassment, I was really her treasure. And I never had bangs again. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was so great. Thank you, Lily.